What's up, guys? Mark here from My Primal Being. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Monday here on a gorgeous fall day in Los Angeles, California, in the backyard, just chilling. Anyways, so last week, as I was wrapping up on probably one of the toughest work weeks I've had in a long time, I realized that I was kind of grateful for the fact that everything I do in terms of training has been geared to optimizing my life. Now, when I realized this, I also started thinking about how I tend to sort of pick at and get annoyed by people who talk about their yoga or their long distance running adventures, or people who have just gotten into CrossFit or something similar, or even people who get into bodybuilding and have no real eye for what that means in terms of optimizing the rest of their lives. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal to me is because I sort of have this long view of what that implications of those things could potentially have for people taking on those activities without an understanding of what the consequences could be down the road. And being that I am licensed to work in the medical field, I know that ultimately the consequences of those activities means probably crappy posture, terrible bone demineralization, bone pains, joint issues, stuff of that nature that most people don't really consider until they hit that wall because, well, we're human and we tend to be reactive. And as much as we can get all the good advice that we can potentially have to keep us from running into such walls, we're going to do it anyways until we stick our hand, like I always say, on that stove and learn the lesson firsthand. And usually at that point, it's a little bit too late. And then you have to do so much more work. You have to put in far more effort to repair and undo whatever damage you've already incurred. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if everything we did in terms of our fitness, nutrition, and our lifestyle were sort of in line with making sure that what we did was done to augment our lives and optimize the way that we move, the way that we function, and the way that we carry on throughout our day-to-day. For example, in my case, what I do is I do a lot of sitting when it comes to work, but that sitting is sort of interspersed with a lot of heavy lifting because I move around 5-gallon buckets of paint, which can be 50 to 60 pounds, and I'll move around 2 at a time. Or if I'm not doing that, I'm climbing up and down ladders, arranging fixtures, and setting up displays at one of the places I work at. So it's a very physical spectrum of work that I'm involved in, which requires that I am able to move through those ranges and I'm able to not only support my own body weight, but the weight of the things that I am carrying and loading on myself. Interestingly, such as in the case of running, most people don't recognize the fact that when you do this, you're actually causing about 3 times, or you're actually loading your bones and your joints with about 3 times the amount of body weight that you would have every time you take a step. So with that in mind, it's absolutely critical that we do things to support our joints and bones to help them grow and be more robust when they're faced with that much pressure and that much damage. Yet nobody that I've known in recent history, unless they were really, really aware, has ever taken the time to develop the skill of running, because it is most certainly a skill. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And also to augment that training with a little bit of resistance training, do some lifting, and make their bones and joints more robust. Now, in the case of yoga, for example, there's absolutely nothing wrong with becoming more limber and flexible and lean and long. I think most people will agree that that's something great to strive for, to become lean, long, flexible, and capable of moving gracefully through the world. Unfortunately, what I do know is that there is this very strong division between those that practice yoga and those that get involved with weight training and resistance training, because somehow weight training and resistance training is somehow more aggro, whereas going into doing yoga is somehow more peaceful, more enlightened, and is usually associated with this meditative and calm sense of being. This is completely untrue, and there's definitely room for both of those things to intermingle. So going back to the issue of yoga, what I tend to dislike about it is that you're extending your ranges of motion beyond, sometimes beyond some unnatural ranges, and or rather beyond some natural ranges into unnatural angles, and you're not really doing anything to build muscle to support that movement. So that at any given point in time, you can find yourself hyperextended, or you may pull something like a shoulder out of its socket, simply because you've set yourself up for that, because now, rather than having the resistance and the robustness in those joints, muscles, and bones to keep within that range and functioning normally, you're now somewhat abnormal, and you haven't quite created the strength to function or move through those ranges. So you're setting yourself up for more damage. Now, in the case of something like CrossFit, my issue is that it's so easy to get wrapped up in the community of all of it, to get caught up in the competitiveness, so that you find yourself wanting to strive to be better and better and better, which is a good thing. But the problem with that is people tend to miss out on the fact that they have to consider and focus on their specific goals and milestones, and not try to look at the person next to them. Because if they do, and they're far older, or they're genetically not as robust or as gifted as the person that they're competing with at their local box, it becomes an issue, because now they're setting themselves up for pain, for damage, for failure beyond what they're able to handle. Now, the reason why it's important to consider these points is that modern living is already pretty stressful as it is. What with traffic, the pressures of obligations like bills and deadlines and things of that nature, we have to take those into consideration. We have to understand that those things demand energy and resources and nutrients from us just as much as these training modalities do. And most people have a tendency to kind of ignore it and believe that since we've caught in this weird headspace where we feel like we're all a bunch of lazy American slackers, we have to go way out of our way to basically grind ourselves to a nub and crawl our way out. Because if we don't feel like we've had the piss beat out of us at the end of the day, then that means we didn't really accomplish anything, and so we're lazy bastards. That couldn't be any further from the truth, and that should be something that we have to consider adjusting, because most people I've also found are severely undernourished. They're very lacking in the necessary nutrients to keep this living going, let alone something like some activity such as yoga, CrossFit, or jogging, or training for something like a triathlon. All these things are very demanding, and in themselves are almost a separate lifestyle from the one you're already carrying on with. Now, it's easy to get caught up and feel inspired and motivated by high-level athletes who are professionals. But the thing that most people don't consider is that these guys are being paid to make that living. So regardless of whatever damage they incur, whatever pain their bodies have to endure, they're being paid for it, and that's the only thing that they do. They don't have to go and carry on with a 9 to 5. They don't necessarily have babies or families to attend to. And even if they did, oftentimes they're being compensated to make up for that lifestyle, so that they don't have to worry about going out and getting a job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs, as well as the pain of going through traffic and all those other things. So it's those considerations that people sort of miss out when they just blindly jump into some training approach that they have no real understanding out of. Now, it's one thing to consider training. You also have to consider the rest of your life and how that all plays into the picture, because relationship issues, family issues, work issues, and ill health can definitely take a toll on what you're doing as far as optimizing your lifestyle. And then if you also don't have your nutrition dialed in, that can become an issue as well. So it's definitely worth taking the time to go. Is yoga, CrossFit, jogging, and training for a marathon or a triathlon worth the pain and the expense physically, energetically, nutritionally? Um, is it worth doing those things when the rest of my life is basically in the dumps? So until you can find a way to make the best of, optimize, and get the greatest bang for your buck with the rest of your life, try not to, or rather step back and scale back the level of investment you have into these other activities until you've learned to optimize your life. In which case you can go ahead and charge on hard. Maybe become the next CrossFit Games competitor and champion. Or maybe you can be the next great yogic teacher, or possibly beat out everybody else on your local marathon, or go and kill the Hawaiian Ironman. Who knows, whatever your particular goals happen to be. But before you go ahead and try to conquer those things, make sure that you have the rest of your life dialed in. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for failure, and someone is going to have to pick up the slack later on down the line. Usually me, when you're at the hospital and I have to wipe your butt, or I have to tend to your wounds and help you recover because you have been so severely damaged. Anyways, as always, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Go ahead and rate my videos. And if you want to keep up to date with all the videos that I post here every Monday, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Once again, I'm Mark from My Primal Being, wishing you a wonderful holiday season. I'll see you guys around. And as always, have fun, be safe, and peace out.